Sandy Alcantara once again had trouble with the Dodgers, and the Dodgers are 4-0 against the Marlins.
You are Locked On Marlins, your daily podcast on the Miami Marlins.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Marlins. I'm your host, Jeremiah Geiger. I've been podcasting about the Marlins for 3 years. I love this team. You can find me at Jeremiah Geiger 2 over on X. And thank you for making Locked On Marlins your first listen of the day. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, which is your team every day. Make sure you're subscribed, make sure you leave a like, and let me know your thoughts in the comments section. And today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. And on today's show, I'm going to talk about Sandy Alcantara. He got roughed up once again by the LA Dodgers, this time in Miami. He gave up 5 earned runs. I'm going to talk about the Marlins' offensive identity. I had the opportunity to ask Clayton McCullough this question, and I really liked his response. So I'm going to share that with you. I'm going to talk about Dane Myers, why I think Dane Myers could be a trade chip at the deadline. I think that is an unpopular opinion, but it needs to be talked about. And also the Marlins draft. Looking back at 2024, how did it go? Can we deem it a success? Can we deem it a failure? It's probably too early for that, but I do have some thoughts on the draft class last season. Let's talk about Sandy Alcantara, because once again, he failed to pitch like an ace. And I know it's the mighty Dodgers, but that doesn't matter to me. Sandy Alcantara, the issue with him is very evident right now. It's not his stuff. It's not the velocity. It's the command. It's the execution of his pitches. What we saw in spring training with Sandy Alcantara being back and the stuff looked just as good, that still rings true today. The issue is the execution of your pitches, no matter what team you're facing. If you don't do it the right way, you're going to pay for it. And especially when you play a team like the Los Angeles Dodgers, who on paper have one of the best lineups constructed this century. And that's kind of what did Sandy in Monday night's game. 5 innings. So he did get through 5 innings, but he gave up 5 earned runs, struck out 4, only walked 1 batter. So that was better. He commanded the strike zone better. But 2 pitches in particular resulted in serious damage for the Dodgers. A fastball right down the middle to Freddie Freeman and a fastball right down the middle to Shohei Ohtani. That can't happen. Those guys are future Hall of Famers. And Sandy Alcantara knows that. He knows he can't pitch like that. That is something that you can get away with maybe in the minor leagues, but certainly not at the major league level, and certainly not against a lineup and players as good as the Dodgers are. I mean, it was a middle pitch both times, right over the heart of the plate. And even with the velocity at 97, 98 miles an hour, you're not going to get away with that. That was my big takeaway from Monday night's start for Sandy Alcantara. Execution. It just goes back to execution. We saw in 2023 how, before the Tommy John surgery, it was kind of a rough season for Sandy Alcantara, and it was frustrating because more often than not, the damage occurred in 1 inning. He had 1 bad sequence of events that led to the ERA shooting up or, a bunch of damage. And that's kind of the same type of trajectory this season is going on. 1 or 2 bad pitches is going to really cost your team and yourself the game. Sandy's a veteran. He's a Cy Young winner. He is the Marlins ace for a reason, and he's going to be their ace until he's not on this team. But right now, he's not pitching like one. He's not executing like one. And the Sandy Alcantara that won the Cy Young Award 3 years ago, it feels a long way off from that. You just can't leave pitches over the heart of the plate. It's as simple as that. It's not a matter of, is Sandy washed in terms of his arm talent. His arm talent's there. The velocity is there. It's mental. It's execution. You got to start this weekend against the White Sox. That is a good opportunity on paper for Sandy Alcantara to get right, if you will. But it doesn't matter if it's the White Sox, the Rockies, or the Dodgers. You still have to make your pitches, and you can't throw meatballs down the middle. So, once again, 7 starts into this season, Sandy Alcantara's ERA is really high. It's 8.42. And I'm still waiting to see that vintage Sandy start. I'm not going to sit here and say it's not going to happen. But against the White Sox, I certainly want to see improvement. Better execution is necessary. Because don't get me wrong, the White Sox will make you pay, just like the Dodgers will. It's been tough. It's been tough to watch this season, the way it started through the first, 1/5 of the starts for Sandy Alcantara, and most of them have been bad. But the issue's evident. It's not hidden there. I don't think there's any underlying problem with his arm or his shoulder or anything like that. Because all I needed to see was the location of those 2 pitches down the middle. I mean, that is something I expect out of a rookie. That's something I would expect out of a less talented pitcher. Somebody who doesn't necessarily know all the nuances of pitching, but not from Sandy Alcantara. It's unlike him. It's uncharacteristic. And that's the game of baseball. You make 1 or 2 bad pitches, the game is unforgiving. The Los Angeles Dodgers lineup is certainly unforgiving. I'm going to talk about the Marlins offense. I had the opportunity over this past weekend to ask Clayton McCullough about the offensive identity so far for the Miami Marlins. That's coming up right after this. Do you ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and you start building wealth. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONMLB for half off your first year. If you're an everyday listener, I thank you for being part of the Locked On Marlins crew. And if this is your first or second time, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any other future episodes. And over this past weekend, I got to ask Clayton McCullough a question about the Marlins' identity on offense. I'm going to play the clip for you right here. How would you describe the identity of the offense so far? What are the guys trying to emphasize during their at-bats?
I think it's, having a solid plan, okay, being disciplined and being stubborn to what your plan is and what the situation or what the moment of the game is calling for, and to be okay with passing the baton. And this is not a passive. Don't talk to our guys about being passive, and it's just about taking pitches. It's more about swinging at the right pitches. And the right pitches for you in an area might be different than someone else. So having what your game plan is going against that starter or that bullpen arm, and being being stubborn to what you're going to get and firing on that, and then you take your shot, take your chances. So, and hopefully that leads to quality plate discipline. It leads to get yourself in good counts, and then you just you get your walk and you go on. You just pass it on to the next guy and let him go have his crack. So I think that's what we're trying to get is a relentless one. It's kind of like a 9-on-1 mentality, like all of us against whoever's pitching.
How would you describe the identity?
I really like that answer from Clayton McCullough. Having a solid plan and approach at the plate. This Marlins lineup has been one of the strengths of this team. In fact, the weakness is the pitching staff. I talked about Sandy and how he needs to execute better. There's been some really interesting pieces emerge from the Marlins lineup. Agustin Ramirez, Kyle Stowers, Dane Myers, more on him later. That I would argue that the offense is overachieving and gives me a lot of hope for what's to come in the coming months. Clayton has it right. Having a plan at the plate, doing your job. To reference football coach, the legendary coach Bill Belichick, who won a ton of Super Bowls with the New England Patriots, he had a phrase, do your job. And it worked because the Patriots, more often than not, didn't have a super strong supporting cast to go with Tom Brady. And if you're a Dolphins fan, Marlins Dolphins fan, you'll know Tom Brady tortured the Finns for years. But it was a team effort. Everybody did their job. And that's what I think Clayton McCullough is trying to say in response to my question. Have an approach, do your job, get it to the next at-bat. Don't give away your at-bats. Don't go up there and swing at anything and be chasing out of the zone. Wait for your pitch because that plate discipline is going to show dividends when you draw walks. It's going to show dividends when you get base hits, and the Marlins are doing very well at that this season. They're collecting a lot of base hits. I think the issue comes from the collective slug. Where is the slug coming from? This team is lacking in power. They can't rely on 2 or 3 guys on any given night just to hit bombs and have multi-home run games and outslug their opponents. So that's why a disciplined approach and a plan at the plate, kind of a chain reaction. You have Xavier Edwards at the top of the lineup. He gets it to the second guy. You get an opportunity to have runners in scoring position. You get that timely hit. I think back to that Seattle series about a week ago in which the Marlins had 2 or 3 2-out hits and drove in a lot of runs. That was perfect baseball right there. A couple singles, a home run, all with 2 outs. You like to see that. Now, where will the power come consistently for the Marlins? Because for the last few years now, power has been, frankly, a black hole in their lineup. Well, you're still waiting for Jesus Sanchez to get around. You're still waiting for Connor Norby to heat up. I think Matt Mervis is a 2-outcome guy. Now, we have the 3-outcome guy, home run, walk, strikeout. I think of like Adam Dunn. Matt Mervis is more of home run or strikeout. That's what it kind of feels like at this point. His batting average has tanked. It's under 200, if I'm not mistaken. But he can get hot at any given time. It just is very streaky. You can't rely on Matt Mervis every single night to bring the boom. Shout out AJ and Big Justice. That was very corny. But anyway, you can't rely on Matt Mervis to bring the power every single game. You need other players to step up. Agustin Ramirez was a huge call-up. He homered in Monday night's game. It wasn't enough, but it got the Marlins closer. Now, if the pitching staff had done their job and kept the Dodgers, under 5 runs, this is a completely different ballgame. and maybe the Marlins pull out a win. Maybe they go to extras. Who knows? But Agustin Ramirez shows what power can do. You get runners on base. You have 2 runners on. You hit a 3-run jack. That's huge. The Marlins need more of that in the future. They need more of that in the coming weeks. And in the short term, just looking at this in a short lens, against the Dodgers, who have scored 41 runs in the last 4 games against the Marlins, and you still have 2 more to play against these guys, you need to bring some juice. But really enjoyed the opportunity when I was down in Miami to ask Clayton that question, because it was something I've been thinking about for a while. You don't have the power consistently. You hit for a decent average, but you're not scoring a ton of runs. What are you guys exactly trying to do? And he answered it really, really well. A couple players have really stood out for this team also. Kyle Stowers has been a great player to start the season. Defensively, offensively, he's a completely different hitter than he was a year ago. He's the reigning National League Player of the Week. Let that sink in for a second. Of all the players in the National League, Kyle Stowers is your NL Player of the Week. Dane Myers has also been on a tear, and the Marlins are playing him every day in center. I love to see that. He's got an absolute cannon of an arm, can throw out runners. He's got 5 outfield assists so far this season. That number is only going to increase unless first base coaches figure it out, read the scouting report, and say if you hit a ball in the gap, you probably shouldn't go for 2 if Dane Myers cuts it off. Third base coach, if you hit a ball to Dane Myers and you're thinking about running from second to home, you should probably double check that decision, because you don't want to run on Dane. But his bat has also been really, really good. He's hitting over 350 to start the season. This is the first year that Dane is starting to get everyday consistent playing time, and I think it can continue for the remainder of the season. Now, I have a hot take when it comes to Dane Myers. I talked about Sandy Alcantara, how his struggles have kind of taken over the team. That's been one of the big storylines, is the struggles of Sandy Alcantara and how he needs to fix it, and it just goes back to command. But the trade rumors surrounding Sandy Alcantara are kind of dying down right now, because why would the Marlins trade Sandy? You can't. It's trading pennies on the dollar. But Dane Myers could be the next Marlins trade chip. Surprising. It's a hot take. I know. I don't want Dane Myers necessarily to get traded, but I'm going to talk about the season he's having and why I think the Marlins could consider this right after this. This episode is brought to you by our friends at Game Time. There's nothing better than catching an MLB game live. The crack of the bat, the roar of the crowd, like at a Kyle Stowers walk-off grand slam, and the smell of ballpark food. And if you're looking to go last minute, Game Time makes getting tickets easier than ever. With last-minute deals, all-in pricing, and a lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the stress out of buying MLB tickets. Plus, ticket prices drop as Game Time gets closer, meaning you can score an incredible deal. And I can verify that is absolutely the truth, because last week when I went to the Durham Bulls Jacksonville Jumbo Shrimp game, I got my ticket from Game Time the night before for $10. Really great deal. I could see exactly where I was going to sit, and it's super easy. You just make your account, you get your ticket, you see where you're sitting. There's no hidden fees. That's my favorite thing about Game Time. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Thank you for making Locked On Marlins your first listen of the day. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure you hit that subscribe button. But remember, if you're on the go, Locked On Marlins is with you on every major podcast platform out there. So if you can't watch on YouTube, you can also listen to us. And I'm talking about Dane Myers. I think the Marlins have a legit player, an all-around player in Dane Myers that will be getting calls about him. Peter Bendix will be getting phone calls about him at the trade deadline. Look, Dane Myers is a really good defensive outfielder. He's got the speed, he's got the range, and he's got the arm. Second most assists in the National League or in Major League Baseball behind Stephen Kwan, according to the Marlins broadcast. Now, you look at his hitting, he's tearing it up. He's got gap-to-gap power, can hit the ball over the fence, can get his base hits, can steal bags. I mean, it really feels like Dane Myers is a complete player that's not getting the notoriety because before this season, he's only played 66 career Major League games. He's playing for the Marlins, and he's 29 years old. All those three factors kind of keep him flying under the radar. But Major League executives certainly know his name. They're not going to stand pat at the deadline if they feel like they could use an upgrade in the outfield. And I know Dane Myers is under contract for a while. He's got plenty of team control, but he's also 29 years old. And the Marlins are embracing a youth movement, and Dane Myers has been a really pleasant surprise this season. I think he's legit. I don't think there's anything fluky about this start to the season. You look at the quality of contact, it's great. He's hitting fastballs, he's hitting breaking balls, he's hitting pretty much everything. And one of his strengths, by the way, is fastballs. Anything at the top of the zone, he will go up and crush. I think Myers is a legit everyday player. I've been saying Myers should be playing every single day, and I think the Marlins are finally realizing that because they've been playing him in center now for 4 consecutive games. The Jesus Sanchez experiment in center, that really turned out poorly in LA. But, you have the defense, you have a really advanced hitter who, like Clayton McCullough, he has his plan. He knows what pitch to attack. His pitch to attack is anything up in the zone. He'll crush. I just think there's a possibility that the Marlins trade him at the deadline. He's not a young player. If the Marlins are falling out of contention, then, everybody on their roster is going to be surrounded by trade rumors if you're not Augustine Ramirez or Connor Norby, but the veterans of the group, I should say, will be talked about in potential trade rumors. We've seen Jesus Sanchez and his name be talked about in trade rumors. In fact, Jeff Carr, the Locked On Reds host, he asked me in a crossover pod a couple weeks back about Jesus Sanchez. And I don't think Jesus Sanchez is as good as Dane Myers in any facet of the game. That's how much I think of Dane Myers. The question should be, will Dane Myers be available at the deadline? Dane Myers is older than Jesus Sanchez. Now, team control, the Marlins love that. But again, next year, Myers will be 30. You get on the wrong side of 30, things can go a lot differently in a lot of different directions. Who's to say that if Myers is sitting end of June, early July, still hitting about 300, and he stays hot, which would be incredible, by the way, that he's not a trade candidate. I don't see why he wouldn't be. I'm trying to think of a reason why the Marlins wouldn't trade Dane Myers, because at the end of the day, this team is rebuilding. And by the time they expect to contend, Dane is 31, 32, and it could look a lot different. You could capitalize on this hot start to the season. And I'm sure this could be an unpopular opinion. I don't know how much value Myers would bring, but this is a breakout year. Breakout season from Dane Myers. You love to see it. Also want to talk about the Marlins draft. Last season, the Marlins went under slot value to draft PJ Morlando at 16th overall, signed him for well below slot value, and then in the second round, they drafted Carter Johnson, who was my favorite pick in the draft, a shortstop out of Alabama, and they used their signing bonus pool that they saved. They saved some of that from going under slot value with PJ Morlando. They went over slot value to go pay Carter Johnson. I think it was about $4 million of a signing bonus, $4 million. I could be wrong on that. But it was a lot of money for a high school kid. He signs to play professional ball. And they really liked him in order to pay him that much money in a signing bonus, but it really hasn't clicked for him. And it makes me wonder, did the Marlins approach last year's draft wrong? I wasn't especially high on PJ Morlando as a first-round pick. Now he's dealt with injury issues. He had the back injury last year. He had a procedure done before this season that sidelined him for a little bit. It makes me wonder whether, he's going to pan out in the long run. There's still plenty of time, but Carter Johnson has just been nothing short of dreadful this season. He's really, really struggled, hitting under 200, and this is low A Jupiter. So I know he's young and there's plenty of time, but what I go back to is one of my favorite prospects, and this is personal bias, because last year at draft time, when I was researching players and who I would want the Marlins to pick, I wanted them to go with Ryan Waldschmidt. That was one of the players I had circled. Waldschmidt was a college hitter out of Kentucky, University of Kentucky, and the Diamondbacks drafted him at 31st overall. I believe a competitive balance pick. They gave him a lot of money, which the Marlins could have done, by the way, if they had drafted him at 16. It just would have changed the approach of the draft. You wouldn't have drafted Carter Johnson then. But Ryan Waldschmidt is tearing it up in high A in the Diamondbacks organization, and is one of their better prospects comfortably within their top 10. I don't know. I think in hindsight is 2020, but in my opinion, the Marlins should have approached that draft differently. Take the best player available in the first round. When you're in a rebuild, you want that talent. You don't want a guy who could maybe hit in PJ Morlando, but you're kidding yourself if you say that he was the best player on your board at that point in time, because he wasn't. This year's draft, how are they going to approach it? The amateur draft is a surefire way to inject talent in your organization without giving up assets. You're not trading away established major leaguers in order to get prospects. You're just drafting them. You have your signing bonus, and you plan it out. When do you want to spend? How much do you want to spend in the first round? The Marlins have the 7th overall pick. It's a lot better than 16th. There's going to be talent in the draft. There's going to be players that rise. There's going to be players that fall. Do you want to draft the pitcher in the first round? That's one of your strengths as an organization, is developing pitching. Thomas White, Yori Perez, two really talented prospects. Yori Perez on his way back from Tommy John. He's already made his major league debut. Thomas White isn't far behind. He's really, really good. But do you go pitcher or do you go hitter? Do you have faith in your new player development system that you can develop a hitter into an above average everyday regular with all-star potential. It's a big, big draft. I thought last year was the jury's still out on Morlando. The jury's still out on Carter Johnson. I would have loved them to go with Ryan Waldschmidt. We're going to see what they do. It's going to be interesting, but the draft is a month or so away. So where is it? All-Star break. I think they moved it to the All-Star break. So about a month and a half away. 2 months. Getting my dates wrong. But Miami has a chance to impact their organization in 2025 and inject more talent. Frankie Pilieri, the Marlins, scouting director, he's got to be on his A game and inject more talent into this system. That's going to do it for today's edition of Locked On Marlins. I hope you enjoyed the episode. Until next time, guys, stay safe, stay locked on, and let's go fish.